The billionaire laughed as he tossed the wrench at 17-year-old Aidan Knox, grease already smeared on his hands. Fix a prototype jet engine? You're just a janitor's son. This thing's worth more than your entire life. The crowd of elite interns smirked, some pulling out phones to record what they thought would be a disaster. Aidan stared at the complex, silent engine, heart pounding. He didn't answer, he just picked up the wrench, and when it roared back to life minutes later, not a single soul dared laugh again. The hangar smelled like hot metal and fresh paint, the scent of innovation and power. Inside, top aerospace interns, mostly Ivy League, stood in branded polos, laughing, elbowing each other while sipping on free protein shakes. Cameras swung from corners, drone cams buzzed overhead, catching every sleek angle of the experimental Falcon 9X engine. The company CEO, Travis Ellington, a billionaire in a tailored charcoal suit, flashed his million-dollar smile to the press before turning to his audience. But all Aidan Knox saw was the machine. He wasn't supposed to be there. His dad, Mark Knox, a widowed single father and janitor at Ellington Dynamics, had brought him in to help clean up after hours. But one of the engineers, overhearing Aidan rattle off specs of a retired turbofan in casual conversation, told him to prove it. One thing led to another, and suddenly he was here, standing in front of the most advanced experimental engine on U.S. soil, with billionaire Travis Ellington raising an eyebrow. "You've got 15 minutes, kid. Show us what the son of a janitor can do." The room went still. Phones came out. Aidan's throat dried. "Don't," Mark whispered from the sidelines, eyes wide. "You don't have to prove anything." But Aidan stepped forward anyway. He touched the engine's surface like it was alive, reverent. While everyone else saw a puzzle of alloy and wires, Aidan saw the rhythm. The airflow geometry, the cracked cooling line, the non-responsive EM bypass module. The problem screamed at him. It wasn't arrogance, it was instinct. He didn't even think, just acted. And then the low whir turned into a humming growl. Lights blinked back to life. The core lit in perfect sync. It roared. The interns backed away in shock. Travis Ellington's smile dropped. "Impossible," an engineer muttered. Aidan stepped back, face calm, hands trembling. Then silence. Someone dropped their drink. Someone else whispered, "Who is this kid?" The billionaire crossed his arms, jaw clenched. "Where'd you learn that?" Aidan looked him dead in the eye. "Helping my dad." But even as the applause started, from the tech leads, the stunned interns, even the security guy, Mark Knox stood frozen. Because he knew. He knew Aidan's brilliance came at a price. He just didn't know who would try to own it. Aidan didn't sleep that night. The engine's growl still echoed in his head. Not because he was proud, though he should have been, but because of how quiet his dad was the entire drive home. Mark kept both hands tight on the steering wheel, eyes forward, jaw stiff. The only words he'd said were, "You shouldn't have done that." They lived in a weathered duplex outside Cincinnati. The wallpaper was peeling in the kitchen, and Aidan's room doubled as a closet. But his shelves were stacked with old aerospace manuals, engine schematics, and self-wired circuits. His world. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling fans spinning, with a squeaky rhythm, knowing everything had just changed. And he was right. At 7:02 a.m., a black Escalade pulled up in front of their driveway. A man in a blue tie stepped out, holding a sleek folder. He knocked once. Mark opened the door, eyebrows raised, tension flickering in his eyes. "Mr. Ellington sent me," the man said with a toothy smile. "He wants to offer your son a position, full-time, immediately." Mark didn't even look at the folder. "He's 17. Genius has no legal age," the man replied smoothly. "We can make exceptions. Ellington Dynamics owns more than tech, Mr. Knox. We influence legislation too. He can start this week." Aidan, standing behind the doorframe, could feel the ice rising in his spine. He glanced at his dad, expecting him to say no. Instead, Mark's voice was low. "Let me guess. You want him on a contract so you can own him, like your last prodigy?" The smile vanished from the man's face. "I'll save you a drive next time," Mark added. "We're not interested." But when the man turned, he looked at Aiden directly. "You saved our engine," he said, voice calm now, measured. "Don't. Let your father decide what your life's worth." The car rolled away slowly. Aiden watched it disappear around the corner, and the weight in his chest tripled. That night, things cracked. "You shouldn't have embarrassed him like that," Mark muttered while washing dishes. Aiden leaned against the counter. "What are you talking about? I just fixed it. I didn't make a speech or—" "He's a billionaire," Mark snapped. "You think men like him enjoy being shown up? You think that was a joke?" "No, Aiden, that was a test, and you passed it too well." Aiden stepped forward. "Why are you mad that I'm good at something?" Mark dropped the dish. It shattered in the sink. His voice was tight. "Because I've seen what they do to kids like you. They lift you up, use your brilliance, and the second you ask for more, they toss you." "I'm not you," Aiden said. Quietly, Mark looked like he'd been slapped. The silence after that cut deeper than any insult. The next day, Aiden was back in school. But word had spread. His classmate Evan, a rich kid who once shoved Aiden's face into a workbench, now nodded at him in the hallway. "You seriously fixed it? Like the whole engine?" he asked. Aiden didn't answer. He didn't have to. Everyone was talking until someone else showed up in the middle of lunch. A helicopter landed on the football field. The principal came sprinting into the cafeteria, tie flapping, sweat streaking his forehead. "Aiden Knox, you've been summoned to the field immediately." Confused, Aiden walked out. Every student followed, phones out, filming. The wind from the blades flattened everyone's hair as Travis Ellington himself stepped down from the chopper, sunglasses on. He walked straight up to Aiden and extended a card. "You humiliated me," he said over the noise. "And I like that. You've got a job if you want it. Custom mentorship, six-figure contract, full lab access. You won't just fix engines, you'll design them." The crowd gasped. "Why me?" Aiden finally asked. Ellington's smile was razor-sharp. "Because you didn't hesitate." Aiden glanced up at the watching students. The crowd, his dad's warning still echoed in his mind. But in his chest, something new burned. "I'll think about it," Aiden said, and walked away without taking the card. That moment, that walk-off, it went viral by 9 p.m., but Aiden had no idea what storm he'd just stepped into. Because some offers come wrapped in admiration, but are soaked in ownership. The contract arrived 3 days later, hand-delivered. No lawyer, no assistant, just Travis Ellington himself, standing in the doorway of their duplex like he owned the entire block. Mark Knox didn't even let him in. "You must be desperate," Mark said, arms crossed. Travis chuckled. "Let's not pretend you're in a position to negotiate. Your son just reignited the Falcon 9X project after 2 years of dead-end R&D. My board wants him. My investors want him. The world will know his name, but only if he signs with me." Aiden stepped up, heart thudding. "What's in it for me?" Ellington handed him the folder. $200,000 starting salary, personal assistant, dorm at our innovation campus, full ride to MIT, Stanford or Caltech, your pick, and your own lab wing. "You'll be the youngest engineer we've ever brought on," Mark cut in. "And what happens when he makes something worth billions?" "You stamp your name on it." Travis looked directly at Aiden. "You can either build machines in your garage until you're 40 and broke, or you can change the world. The choice is yours. I'll be in my car for 10 minutes. Then he walked away. Mark turned to Aiden. "Don't let them buy you." Aiden stared at the folder. "What if they're not buying me? What if they're investing in me?" Mark's voice cracked. "And when they own your every breath, when they take what you build and leave your name off it, what then?" Aidan opened the folder. The number $200,000 looked bigger than anything he'd ever seen, and in the signature line, he saw something more powerful than money. Freedom. He signed. 2 months later, Ellington Dynamics Campus, Virginia. Aidan's name was printed in gold on the frosted door of Lab E1. He had access to AI-integrated blueprints, robotics wings, quantum simulators. The world's smartest adults now called him Sir. But behind the glass and gloss, he started to notice things, like the prototype jet he reprogrammed last week. Suddenly credited to a man named Conrad Shields, Ellington's lead engineer, or how every idea he logged into the system got tagged as property of Ellington Dynamics, with his name quietly pushed into a subfolder, or how they were assigning him a shadow, a girl named Dana, polished and sweet, who was always around, too helpful, too observant. One night, while testing a hybrid fuel cell alone, she leaned against the wall. "You miss home?" she asked. He nodded. "My dad's probably still mad I left." Dana smiled gently. "Ellington's intense, but he's brilliant. He makes kings out of kids like you." Aidan stared at the hum of the chamber. "Or cages out of them." She blinked. "You think he's using you?" "I think he's pretending not to." She fell silent. That night, Aidan dug deeper. He snuck into a restricted database, using one of the older engineers' biometrics. He'd memorized the retina pattern days ago. And what he saw? A report. Sealed. Title: Operation Mercury Inheritance. Inside: his name, project value $3.6 billion. Primary attribution: Travis Ellington. Inventor: anonymous, under NDA. Aidan's chest froze. They were filing for patents, using his work and erasing him from the credits. That same week they assigned him a media handler. "You're not to speak about your work," she said flatly. "You're not the face. Ellington is." Aidan said nothing, but in his head a clock started ticking. Back in Ohio, Knox watched the news. A prototype engine had just powered a supersonic aircraft to break atmospheric threshold in under 48 seconds. The anchor called it Ellington's greatest invention. Mark's throat tightened. He rewound, froze the image, the burn pattern on the engine nozzle. He'd seen Aidan sketch it 6 years ago on a napkin at the diner. Mark dropped the remote. "They stole my son's soul," he whispered. Kindness arrived in the unlikeliest of places. Dana. She slipped a flash drive into Aidan's palm late one night. "I've been watching too," she whispered. "They're stealing everything, but I've been making backups, schematics, log files, timestamps, proof it's yours." "Why?" Aidan whispered. "You're part of them." "Not anymore." She met his eyes. "You deserve credit and freedom." Aidan clutched the drive, the weight of truth finally in his hands. It was time, not to walk away, to burn the system down. The next morning, Aidan didn't show up at Labby. He won. He was already gone. Dana had arranged it. Fake ID, burner laptop, a small cabin in rural Virginia where no facial recognition system could track him, and inside his backpack, the flash drive containing everything: stolen schematics, internal emails, footage of Ellington's team crediting his work to others. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was theft, systematic, deliberate, billion-dollar fraud committed in silence while the world cheered Ellington on. But now, Aidan had proof. Back in Ohio, Knox hadn't heard from his son in a week. He hadn't touched a drink in 10 years, but the unopened bottle on the counter tonight had his attention. He sat alone in the kitchen, the TV humming in the background. Travis. Ellington is expected to deliver the keynote at this year's Global Tech Frontier Conference. Rumors suggest he'll unveil the world's first self-repairing jet engine. Mark's jaw tightened. His son's design. Mark didn't pray often, but tonight he closed his eyes and whispered, "Please, don't let them break him." Meanwhile, In the cabin, Aiden's fingers flew across the keys. Lines of code blinked past the screen. He wasn't just pulling proof. He was rewriting the narrative. Dana stepped in with 2 coffees. "Are you sure you want to do this live, on their biggest stage?" Aiden nodded. "They took everything but my voice, so I'm giving it back. Loudly. But your face, they'll know." He looked up, eyes cold. "Let them." 2 weeks. Later, Global Tech Frontier Conference, Chicago, 10,000 people packed the dome. Press from 40 countries. Every screen in the stadium said the same thing. Travis Ellington. Keynote begins in 5 minutes. Backstage, Ellington straightened his blazer, checked his mic, and gave his usual dazzling smile to the production crew. But when he stepped out, the screens didn't show him. They showed Aiden Knox, live, real-time, no warning. Aiden stood in front of a dark curtain in a plain grey hoodie. The signal was hijacked, broadcast from an encrypted location. And his first words? "Let's talk about the truth." Gasps. The entire conference froze. Cameras whirred. Journalists leaned forward. "I'm Aiden Knox, son of a janitor, and the real mind behind the Mercury Inheritance Project." He clicked a remote. Screens split in 2. Ellington on one side, boasting in press interviews. On the other side, time-stamped footage of Aiden building the prototype, drafting blueprints, fixing code, even sketching the airflow layout with his own hands. The audience sat stunned. "Ellington Dynamics erased my name," Aiden said, voice steady. "They filed patents under someone else's, and when I questioned it, they silenced me." A second click. The flash drive's files projected one after another. Emails, voice memos, even Dana's own logs confirming everything. Security scrambled to shut it down, but Dana had locked the feed through 8 firewalls. Genius isn't a commodity, and it doesn't belong in the hands of thieves, Aiden continued. "You may not know me, but you will remember me." The final image on screen, a patent application, signed Aiden Knox. The crowd exploded. Reporters swarmed the stage. Executives whispered. The board of Ellington Dynamics went into immediate damage control. And backstage, Travis Ellington's face turned to stone. He stormed off, his entire empire crumbling behind him. 48. Hours later, FBI agents entered the Ellington Dynamics headquarters. Dana's flash drive had done more than reveal patent theft. It showed financial fraud, NDAs, signed under pressure, whistleblower suppression. Travis Ellington was arrested for corporate malpractice and intellectual property theft. Aiden didn't watch the news. He was too busy at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. 2 months later, he stood on a stage in Pasadena. Suit tailored, hair clean cut, name glowing on the projector behind him, Dr. Aiden Knox, lead innovator, atmospheric propulsion division. But in the front row, wearing a wrinkled flannel shirt and watery eyes, sat Mark Knox. And for the first time in a long time, he smiled. Aiden stepped up to the mic. "This one," he said softly, "is for every kid who was told they'd never amount to anything. And every parent who stood by them anyway." Applause filled the room. But in that crowd was one more person, a quiet teen in a janitor's uniform, watching from the back, eyes wide. And as Aiden left the stage, he walked over and handed him something, a wrench. "I was in your place once," he said. "Start here." Months passed. Not quietly. Aiden Knox had become a name bigger than any press release could contain. He wasn't just a viral headline anymore. He was the face of earned genius, the symbol of what happens when raw talent defies pedigree. MIT offered him an honorary doctorate. Stanford invited him to speak to incoming freshmen. Even Elon Musk posted, "Kids got more guts than half of Silicon Valley." But Aiden didn't care about any of that. He was focused on something else, something bigger. It started with a letter, handwritten, tucked beneath a pile of fan mail. "Dear Mr. Knox, my name is Ethan. I'm 14, and I work on engines too. My dad's a mechanic, and I help him every weekend. But people at school say I'm wasting my time. that kids like me don't get into places like MIT. But after I saw your video, I believe maybe I can. Even if we don't have much, I just wanted to say thank you." Aiden held that letter for a long time. Then he stood up, called Dana, and said, "We're starting something." 6 months later, Detroit, Michigan, inside an abandoned automotive warehouse, now gleaming with new lights and humming machines, a banner hung from the rafters. The Knox Institute. For Engineers Without Borders, it wasn't a school. It wasn't a startup. It was a launch pad. A free program offering access to tools, mentorship, and resources for kids with talent, but no connections. It was his real legacy. Mark stood at the back of the room during the ribbon cutting, quiet, proud. Aiden walked over and put an arm around him. "I know I said I wasn't you," Aiden said. "But truth is, I'm only here because I am." Mark's eyes glistened. "You're more than me, son. You took what I gave you and built something I never could." Meanwhile, across the country, Travis Ellington sat in a low-security facility in Arizona, stripped of his fortune, names smeared across headlines. Investors had fled. His company was absorbed and renamed by the government. His lawyers had tried to silence Aiden, threatened him, even offered settlements. Aiden never took a cent. Revenge had already been served, publicly, but forgiveness, that was trickier. One day, an envelope arrived at the prison. No return address. Inside was a single sheet. "I'm not mad anymore, because you taught me exactly what not to become." A.K. Ellington crumpled the page, but he never threw it away. Back at the Knox Institute, Ethan, the boy who wrote the letter, now stood beside Aiden in the lab. "Go on," Aiden said. "Run the test." The engine on the table roared to life, smoother than expected. "Perfect," Aiden said. "You adjusted the chamber pressure." Ethan grinned. "I read your old Mercury prototype notes. You left a pattern there, like a clue." Aiden smiled. "I did. Thought someone smart might find it." Ethan's face lit up. "So what now?" Aiden leaned down. "Now you teach someone else. Pass it on, just like I did." 2 years later, the Institute had spread to 6 cities, hundreds of kids, thousands of ideas. No paywalls, no ownership clauses, just minds being lit like stars. Aiden declined interviews, declined awards, but sometimes he'd walk into a class, unannounced, roll up his sleeves and work beside the next kid who reminded him of himself. One day, while polishing an engine housing, he looked up and caught his reflection in the metal. Not the lost kid who once stared down a billionaire, but the man who rewrote what genius looks like. Late at night, Mark Knox swept the back corridor of the Institute. He didn't have to, but he liked the quiet. He passed by a wall lined with framed photos. At the center, an image of young Aiden, standing beside the first jet engine he ever repaired. Below it, a plaque. The world laughed when he picked up the wrench. They weren't laughing when it flew. And just beneath it, in smaller letters, "In honor of the janitors, the dreamers, the kids with calloused hands and wild minds, you belong here." Mark smiled, because kindness, in the end, wasn't just in what Aiden built. It was in who he built it for.